My daughter-in-law turned my grandson against me. She's not even your real grandmother. They cut me off from their lives for 7 years. When my business became a $10 million company and I bought a mansion, they showed up. Hi, mother-in-law. Since you have plenty of space, we came to live here. But what I did left them pale-faced. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I'm 65 years old now, and I can still hear those words as clearly as if they were spoken yesterday. She's not even your real grandmother. My daughter-in-law Milani's voice rang through my son's kitchen, sharp and cruel, designed to cut deep, and it did. My grandson Elliot, all of 8 years old with those bright blue eyes that reminded me so much of his father at that age, looked up at me with confusion. Then something shifted in his face, something cold, something that broke my heart into pieces I'm still trying to put back together 7 years later. I don't want you here, fake grandma, he said quietly, those little words carrying more weight than any boulder. He pushed away the birthday gift I'd brought him, a wooden train set I'd spent weeks picking out, and ran upstairs. That was the beginning of the end. Let me back up. I need you to understand who I was before that day destroyed everything. I was Velma Patterson, a woman who'd raised her son Tom completely alone after my husband died in a construction accident when Tom was only 6. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, cleaning offices at night, working retail during the day, and doing alterations on weekends. My fingers were permanently pricked from sewing needles, my back permanently bent from scrubbing floors. But I never complained. Not once. Every sacrifice I made was for Tom. When he wanted to play Little League, I found a way to pay the fees. When he needed help with homework, I stayed up until 2 in the morning helping him even though I had to be at work by 6. When he graduated high school and got into college, I took out loans I'm still paying off at 65 just to make sure he could have the education I never did. I thought I'd raised him right. Tom grew up to be a decent man, or at least I believed he was. He got a good job, married Milani, and when Elliot was born, I thought my life was finally complete. I was going to be the grandmother I'd dreamed of being, the one who baked cookies and told bedtime stories and showed up to every school play. For the first few years, everything seemed perfect. Elliot would light up when I walked into a room. He'd run to me with his arms wide open, shouting, "Grandma Velma," in that sweet little voice that made every hardship I'd ever endured worth it. I babysat him whenever Tom and Milani needed a break. I helped with feedings and diaper changes. I was there for his first steps, his first words. I thought I was part of their family. But Milani always watched me with narrowed eyes, like I was some kind of threat. She'd make little comments. "Oh, you don't have to come over so often, Velma. We're managing fine." Or, "Maybe you should call before stopping by next time." I brushed it off. I figured she was just protective of her new family, still adjusting to having a mother-in-law around. I should have seen the signs. Should have noticed how she'd change the subject whenever I talked about my past with Tom, how she'd usher Elliot away whenever he got too comfortable in my lap. Should have realized she was building a wall between me and my grandson, brick by careful brick. The explosion came on Elliot's 8th birthday. I'd arrived early to help set up for his party, carrying bags full of decorations and that wooden train set. The house was buzzing with activity, Milani directing the catering setup, Tom arranging tables in the backyard, Elliot running around in his new birthday shirt. That's when I heard Milani on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low, but not low enough. "I just don't understand why she has to be so involved," she was saying. "She acts like she's more important than his actual parents. It's getting weird, honestly." My blood ran cold. I stood frozen in the doorway, bag still in my hands. "I mean, she's not even really his grandmother," Milani continued. "Not like my mom is. She didn't even raise Tom properly. Look how he turned out. Always needing to be rescued, never standing up for himself." The bag slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor with a loud thud. Milani spun around, her face flushing red when she saw me standing there, but instead of apologizing, instead of showing even a hint of shame, her expression hardened. "Elliot!" she called out, her voice suddenly bright and false. "Come here, sweetie." My grandson bounded into the kitchen, still full of birthday excitement. Milani knelt down to his level and looked directly at me as she spoke. "Honey, I need to tell you something important about Grandma Velma," she said, her tone sickeningly sweet. "She's not really your grandmother. Not like Grandma Susan is. Grandma Susan is my real mom, which makes her your real grandma. Velma is just Daddy's mom. That's different." I watched the light die in Elliot's eyes, watched confusion replace the love that used to be there. "What do you mean?" he asked, looking between Milani and me. "I mean she's not family the same way we are," Milani said, straightening up. "Real grandmas are the mommy's mommy. That's how it works." The cruelty of it took my breath away, the calculated malice. She was poisoning my relationship with my grandson right in front of me, using an 8-year-old's innocent confusion about family dynamics as her weapon. But she's always been my grandma," Elliot said, his little voice wavering. "Well, now you know the truth," Milani said firmly. "And the truth is, she's not really part of our family. Not the way that matters." That's when Elliot looked up at me with those newly cold eyes and said the words that still haunt my dreams. "I don't want you here, fake grandma." Tom walked in just as I was gathering up the scattered gifts from the floor. He took one look at the scene, Milani standing triumphant, Elliot confused and upset, me on my knees picking up broken pieces, and I waited for him to defend me, to tell his wife she'd gone too far, to explain to his son that families come in all different shapes and sizes. Instead, he cleared his throat and said quietly, "Maybe you should go, Mom. Give us some space to handle this." That was 7 years ago. 7 years of returned birthday cards, 7 years of unanswered phone calls, 7 years of watching my grandson grow up through glimpses on social media before Milani blocked me from even that small window into his life. But they didn't know what I was building in that silence. They had no idea what a woman with nothing left to lose could accomplish when she channeled all her pain into purpose. They were about to find out. The first year after they cut me out was the hardest. I'd wake up every morning and for just a moment, I'd forget. I'd think about calling Elliot to ask about his day at school, or wonder if Tom needed help with anything around his house. Then reality would crash back down, and the emptiness would settle in my chest like a stone. I cried a lot that first year, more than I had since my husband died. But somewhere around month 13, the tears stopped coming. Instead, something else took their place. A cold, burning determination I'd never felt before. I was working at Henderson's cleaning service then, the same job I'd held for 15 years. Steady pay, reliable hours, nothing glamorous. But I'd always been good with numbers, good at seeing patterns and inefficiencies. During my lunch breaks, I started noticing things about how the company operated. How much they were charging clients versus how much they were paying us workers. How many contracts they were losing because of poor scheduling and communication. One day, Mrs. Henderson mentioned she was thinking about selling the business. She was getting older, she said, and her children weren't interested in taking over. I asked her how much she wanted for it. "Oh, Velma," she laughed. "You're sweet to ask, but something like this would cost at least $200,000. It's not exactly something you can pick up on a cleaning lady's salary." She was right, of course. I had maybe $3,000 in savings, but I also had something she didn't know about, a fierce hunger to prove I was more than the discarded woman my family thought I was. I spent the next 6 months learning everything I could about business loans, franchise opportunities, and small business ownership. I took night classes at the community college, studying accounting and marketing while my body ached from cleaning buildings all day. I wrote business plans on napkins during my breaks and researched competitors on the library computers. When I finally approached the bank about a loan, the loan officer looked at me like I'd lost my mind. A 60-year-old woman with no college degree and minimal savings wanting to buy a cleaning service? But I'd done my homework. I presented him with profit projections, expansion plans, and a detailed analysis of the local market. I explained how I could cut costs by 20% just by eliminating the inefficiencies I'd observed over the years. "Mrs. Patterson," he said slowly, "this is actually quite impressive, but I'm still not sure we can justify the risk." That's when I played my trump card. I told him I was willing to work without taking a salary for the first 2 years, reinvesting everything back into the business. I'd continue living in my small apartment, continue driving my 15-year-old Honda, continue eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch. Everything would go toward making the company successful. He approved the loan. Mrs. Henderson nearly cried when I presented her with the offer. She'd been struggling to find a buyer for months, and here I was, ready to pay her asking price and willing to keep on all the existing employees. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, cleaning during the regular shifts, then handling administrative tasks, marketing and scheduling until late into the night. I learned to use computers properly, figured out how to build a website, taught myself about digital marketing. My hands were raw from cleaning supplies, my eyes burned from staring at screens, but I pushed through it all. During those long nights when exhaustion made my bones ache, I'd think about Elliot, wonder if he was doing well in school, if he still loved trains, if he ever asked about me. I'd imagine him older, maybe understanding someday that his fake grandma had never stopped loving him. That thought kept me going when nothing else would. The business started growing faster than I'd expected. Word spread that Patterson Cleaning Services was reliable, thorough, and fairly priced. I hired more staff, took on bigger contracts, expanded into residential cleaning. By year 3, I was finally able to pay myself a modest salary. By year 5, I owned the building the business operated from, but it wasn't enough. The hunger inside me had grown into something bigger. I started researching other service businesses, landscaping, maintenance, property management. One by one, I acquired them, creating a small empire of interconnected services. If you needed your office cleaned, your lawn maintained, and your plumbing fixed, Patterson Services could handle it all. The money started flowing in ways I'd never imagined possible. Not just thousands now, but hundreds of thousands. I moved from my tiny apartment to a modest house, then from the modest house to something bigger. I bought new clothes, got my hair done at an actual salon instead of cutting it myself in the bathroom mirror. But the real transformation wasn't external. It was the way I carried myself, the way I spoke to people, the confidence that came from knowing I'd built something substantial from nothing. When business associates met me now, they saw someone to be respected, someone whose time was valuable, someone who commanded attention. Still, the house felt empty. Success tastes bitter when you have no one to share it with. I kept tabs on Tom and his family through mutual acquaintances, though I was careful to be discreet about it. I learned that Tom's career in middle management wasn't going particularly well. He'd been passed over for promotion twice and seemed stuck in a dead-end position. Milani had quit her part-time job as a receptionist to focus on being a stay-at-home mom, though from what I heard she spent most of her time at coffee shops and shopping centers. Elliot was 15 now, a teenager I wouldn't recognize if I passed him on the street. The thought of that broke my heart all over again. I'd missed his first day of high school, his school plays, his baseball games, if he even played baseball. I didn't know what interested him anymore, what made him laugh, what kept him awake at night worrying. Last Christmas, I drove past Tom's house. Just once, just to see. It was smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling slightly around the windows. Tom's car in the driveway was at least 10 years old, and I could see the stress lines even from a distance when he came out to get the mail. Part of me wanted to stop, to knock on the door and try to bridge the gap that had grown so wide between us. But I wasn't ready yet. I was still building something, still becoming someone they couldn't dismiss or discard so easily next time, because deep down, I knew there would be a next time. People like Tom and Milani, who'd never learned to stand on their own feet, always came back eventually when they needed something. And when they did, I wanted to be ready. I bought the mansion 6 months ago, a sprawling, elegant home with more rooms than I could ever use. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and grounds that required a full-time landscaping crew. It was more house than a 65-year-old woman living alone could ever need, but that wasn't the point. The point was that I could afford it. The point was that when they finally came knocking, and I was certain they would, they'd see exactly what they'd walked away from 7 years ago. The house echoed with my footsteps, too big and too quiet for one person. Some nights, I'd sit in the formal dining room that could seat 12 people, eating my dinner alone while looking out at the perfectly manicured lawn. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd achieved more success than I'd ever dreamed of, but I had no family to enjoy it with. That was about to change, though. Last week, I'd heard through the grapevine that Tom had been laid off from his job. Something about company downsizing, budget cuts. And just yesterday, a friend of a friend mentioned seeing Milani looking frazzled at the grocery store, counting coupons and checking prices carefully. The universe, it seemed, was finally ready to complete the circle. I was ready too, ready to show them exactly what they'd thrown away, and ready to decide whether they deserved a second chance. But the past has a strange way of knocking on your door when you least expect it. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. I know because I was sitting in my home office, reviewing quarterly reports from my landscaping division, when the chime echoed through the marble foyer. I wasn't expecting anyone. My housekeeper, Maria, only came on Thursdays, and I'd learned to schedule all business meetings at my downtown office to keep my personal space sacred. Through the security monitor, I could see 3 figures standing awkwardly on my front porch. A tall man with thinning hair and slumped shoulders. A woman with bleached blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, designer purse clutched against her chest like armor. And between them, a lanky teenager with dark hair falling over his eyes, hands shoved deep in his pockets. My heart stopped. Then it started racing so fast I thought I might faint. Tom, Milani, and Elliot. They had suitcases. I sat frozen for a full minute, just watching them on the screen. Tom kept shifting his weight from foot to foot, the way he used to do as a child when he was nervous about asking for something. Milani checked her reflection in the glass of my front door, smoothing down her hair and straightening her shoulders. Elliot looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. 7 years. 7 years since I'd seen my son and grandson in person. Elliot had been a little boy then, all gap-toothed grins and boundless energy. Now he was taller than his mother, his face sharp with teenage angles I didn't recognize. The doorbell rang again, then again. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking slightly. In the hallway mirror, I caught sight of myself, silver hair styled in an elegant bob, wearing the kind of expensive blouse I never could have afforded in my cleaning service days. I looked successful, established, nothing like the broken woman they'd dismissed 7 years ago. Good. I opened the door, keeping my expression carefully neutral. Tom! My son's face cracked with something that might have been relief. Mom! Hi! We. He gestured helplessly at the suitcases. Velma! Milani stepped forward with a smile so bright it could have powered the neighborhood. Oh my goodness! Look at this place! And look at you! You look fantastic! I let my gaze drift over her slowly. The designer purse was worn at the corners, I noticed. Her jeans, while name brand, had a small stain near the hem that she'd tried to hide with bleach. Her smile was too wide, too desperate. Milani, I said evenly. Then I looked at Elliot, my grandson. The little boy who used to run into my arms was now nearly as tall as his father, with Tom's serious brown eyes and my late husband's stubborn jawline. He was looking everywhere except at me, at the marble columns flanking my entrance, at the manicured gardens visible through the gates, at his worn sneakers. Elliot, I said softly. He glanced up briefly, then away again. Hi, he mumbled. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Tom cleared his throat. Mom, I know this is unexpected, but we were wondering if we could talk to you about something. About maybe, he swallowed hard. About maybe staying here for a while. I'd imagined this moment countless times over the years. In some versions, I slammed the door in their faces. In others, I broke down crying and welcomed them with open arms. But standing here now, looking at their desperate faces and matching luggage, I felt nothing but a strange, detached calm. Come in, I said, stepping aside. They filed past me into the foyer, and I watched their faces as they took in the crystal chandelier, the marble floors, the sweeping staircase with its hand-carved banister. Tom's mouth fell open slightly. Milani's eyes went wide, calculating. Elliot just kept staring at the floor. This is, wow, Mom, Tom said. I had no idea you were doing so well. Your cleaning business must be really successful, Milani added, her voice artificially sweet. I don't own a cleaning business anymore, I said. I own several businesses. Please sit down. I led them into the formal living room, Noting how they hesitated before settling onto my cream-colored Italian leather furniture, Milani perched on the edge of her seat as if she might bolt at any moment. Tom sank back with the exhaustion of a man carrying too much weight. Elliot slumped into a corner chair, pulling out his phone. "Put that away, please," I told my grandson. "When adults are talking, you participate in the conversation." Elliot looked startled, clearly not used to being given direct instructions. He glanced at Milani, who nodded quickly, then tucked the phone into his pocket. "So," I said, settling into my favorite armchair, "what brings you here after 7 years of silence?" Tom winced. Milani's smile flickered for just a moment before she managed to brighten it again. "Well, you know how it is with family," Milani said with a little laugh. "Sometimes life gets busy and you lose touch, but family is forever, right? And we've missed you so much. Have you?" "Of course. Haven't we, Tom? Haven't we, Elliot?" She nudged her son, who mumbled something that might have been agreement. Tom leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "Mom, I'll be honest. We're going through a rough patch. I lost my job 3 months ago. The company downsized and they cut my entire department. I've been looking for work, but the market is tough, and—" He took a shaky breath. "We're behind on the mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure." "I see. And where do I fit into this situation?" Milani jumped in eagerly. "Well, you have so much space here. This house is enormous. And we're family. So we thought maybe we could stay with you while Tom gets back on his feet. Just temporarily, of course." "Temporarily," I repeated. "Just until I find something new," Tom said quickly. "I have some interviews lined up. It shouldn't take long." I looked at each of them in turn. Tom, my son, who hadn't called me once in 7 years, but now sat in my living room asking for shelter. Milani, who had poisoned my relationship with my grandson and was now acting as if we were old friends. And Elliot, who was staring at his hands and clearly wished he was anywhere else. "Tell me, Elliot," I said. "Do you remember me?" He looked up, confusion flickering in his eyes. Sort of. You used to come to our old house sometimes. Do you remember what I was to you?" Another quick glance at his mother. You're Dad's mom." "That's right. I'm your grandmother. Your real grandmother, despite what you were told when you were 8 years old." Milani's face went pale. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Mom," Tom said quietly, "that was a long time ago. Maybe we don't need to bring up old—" "Old what, Tom? Old wounds? Old lies?" I kept my voice level, but something in my tone made him shrink back. "Your wife convinced your son that I wasn't really his grandmother. She turned him against me and convinced you to cut me out of your lives. And now you show up at my door with suitcases, asking for help." "Velma, I think there may have been some misunderstandings," Milani started. "No misunderstandings," I said firmly. "I heard every word you said that day. I remember exactly how you explained to an 8-year-old boy that I wasn't really his family." Elliot was looking between us now, his teenage composure cracking slightly. "What are you talking about?" Milani's smile had completely disappeared. "Elliot, sweetie. Grown-ups sometimes remember things differently. I remember it perfectly," I said. My eyes locked on my grandson's face. "Your mother told you I wasn't your real grandmother. She said real grandmothers were only the mother's mother. She convinced you to reject me, and you did." Elliot's face went through several emotions at once: confusion, recognition, and something that might have been shame. I was just a kid. I didn't understand. No, you were a child who trusted the adults in your life to tell you the truth. It wasn't your fault." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel. Finally, Tom spoke. "Mom, we made mistakes. I made mistakes. But we're family, and family forgives each other, right? We need your help." I stood up slowly, walking to the large window that overlooked my gardens. Outside, the landscaping crew was trimming the hedges into perfect geometric shapes. Everything in my view was exactly as I wanted it, controlled and beautiful. "You need my help," I repeated without turning around. "After 7 years of treating me as if I didn't exist, you need my help?" "Yes, Tom said quietly. We're desperate, Velma, Milani added, her voice cracking slightly. We have nowhere else to go. I turned back to face them, taking in their expectant faces. Tom looked exhausted and defeated. Milani was trying to hold on to her fake smile, but fear was creeping around the edges. Elliot was staring at me with something like curiosity, as if he was seeing me clearly for the first time. The old Velma, the woman who had cleaned buildings for 15 years and accepted scraps of affection from her son, would have welcomed them with open arms. Would have been grateful just to have her family back, regardless of the circumstances. But that woman was gone. In her place sat someone who had built an empire from nothing, someone who had learned the value of respect, someone who understood that love without boundaries was just enabling. You can stay, I said finally. The relief that washed over their faces was almost comical. But there will be conditions. The relief flickered. I moved back to my chair, settling in with the authority of someone who was completely in control of the situation. First, this is my house, and will follow my rules. Second, everyone contributes. There are no free rides here. And third, some things that happened 7 years ago need to be addressed properly. Tom nodded quickly. Of course, Mom. Whatever you think is fair. Milani's smile was more strained now, but she nodded too. We're just so grateful. Don't be grateful yet, I said quietly. You haven't heard all the conditions. I looked at each of them again, these people who had discarded me when I was inconvenient and come crawling back when I was useful. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and we all knew it. But that's a conversation for tomorrow, I continued, standing up. Maria will show you to your rooms. Dinner is at 7 sharp. We dress for dinner in this house. As I walked toward the door, I heard Milani whisper to Tom, She's different. Yes, I thought. I am. But this was just the beginning of what I had planned. I woke up at 5:30 a.m., just like I had every day for the past 7 years. Old habits from my cleaning service days died hard, but now I used those early morning hours differently. Instead of rushing to get to work, I spent them in my home gym, then in my office reviewing reports and planning my day. By the time most people were having their first cup of coffee, I'd already accomplished more than they would all morning. This morning was different, though. This morning, I had house guests. I could hear movement upstairs as I finished my workout, the sound of running water, muffled conversations, a door slamming somewhere. My family was waking up in my house for the first time in 7 years. The irony wasn't lost on me. Maria arrived at exactly 7, just as she had every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 years. She was a small, efficient woman in her 50s who took pride in maintaining my home to my exacting standards. When she saw the extra place settings I'd requested for breakfast, her eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't ask questions. Maria understood discretion. Good morning, Mrs. Patterson, she said, tying her apron. Should I prepare the guest rooms for longer stays? Yes, I told her. We'll be having company for a while. And Maria? From now on, my daughter-in-law will be helping you with the household duties. Maria's poker face was impressive, but I caught the slight widening of her eyes. In the 3 years she'd worked for me, no one had ever helped her. She ran my household like a precision instrument, and the idea of an untrained assistant was clearly alarming. Of course, Mrs. Patterson. How would you like me to train her? Thoroughly, I said. Start her with the basics. Cleaning bathrooms, scrubbing floors, doing laundry properly. Make sure she understands that there are standards in this house. Tom appeared in the kitchen doorway at 7:45, looking rumpled and uncertain. He was wearing the same clothes he'd arrived in yesterday, wrinkled from sleeping in them. His hair stuck up in several directions. Good morning, he said awkwardly. I hope it's okay that I came down early. I couldn't really sleep. Good morning, Tom. Coffee is on the counter. We eat breakfast at 8 sharp. He poured himself a cup with hands that shook slightly. Mom, about yesterday, about the things we discussed, I want you to know how much I appreciate this. Having us stay here, I mean. I looked up from the Wall Street Journal I was reading. Do you remember what I told you about conditions? Yes, ma'am. The first condition is that everyone in this house contributes. That means you'll be helping with maintenance and yard work while you're looking for employment. Tom blinked. Yard work? The grounds are extensive. Jose and his crew handle the major landscaping, but there are daily tasks that need attention. Weeding flower beds, maintaining the pool area, cleaning outdoor furniture. Physical work is good for the soul, don't you think? My son, who hadn't done manual labor since he was a teenager, looked like he'd swallowed something sour. But he nodded. Of course, whatever you need. Milani made her entrance at 7:58, wearing a silk robe that had seen better days and designer slippers that were beginning to fray at the edges. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and she'd applied makeup despite being in my house at breakfast time. She was still performing, still playing the role of the perfect wife and mother. "Good morning, Velma," she chirped, her voice artificially bright. "What a gorgeous kitchen. You must love cooking in here." "I don't cook," I said flatly. "Maria handles all the meal preparation. Speaking of which, you'll be assisting her with kitchen duties and general housekeeping while you're staying here." The bright smile faltered. "I'm sorry, what?" "Everyone contributes, Milani. I thought I made that clear yesterday. But I've never really—" She looked helplessly at Tom, who was suddenly very interested in his coffee cup. "Never really what? Cleaned? Cooked? Done laundry?" I folded my newspaper and looked directly at her. "How interesting. How exactly did you manage to run a household all these years?" A flush crept up her neck. "Well, I did those things, but I thought since you have help." "I have help because I can afford help. You're staying here as my guests, which means you'll contribute to the household in whatever way I see fit. Maria will train you in proper cleaning techniques this morning." Elliot shuffled in just as the grandfather clock in the foyer chimed 8 o'clock. He was wearing rumpled clothes too, and his hair looked like he'd slept in a windstorm. Unlike his parents, he didn't try to make conversation. He just slumped into a chair and stared at the elaborate place setting in front of him with confusion. "There are 3 forks," he said. "Yes. The small one is for fruit, the medium one for eggs, the large one for everything else. We maintain certain standards in this house." He looked at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Standards?" "Proper behavior, good manners, respect for others and for yourself." I gestured to his appearance. "For instance, we dress appropriately for meals. That means no pajamas, no wrinkled clothes, and no baseball caps at the table." Milani let out a nervous laugh. "Velma, he's just a teenager. You know how they are." "I know how this one will be while he's living in my house," I said calmly. "Elliot, after breakfast, you'll help your father with outdoor chores. Fresh air and physical work will do you good." The boy looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. Instead, he mumbled, "Yes, ma'am." Maria served breakfast with her usual efficiency: fresh fruit, perfectly scrambled eggs, bacon, and homemade biscuits. The kind of meal I'd dreamed of being able to afford when I was working 3 jobs to keep Tom and me fed. The conversation was stilted and awkward. Tom made several attempts to reminisce about the old days, but his memories seemed to focus exclusively on the times I'd helped him out of various scrapes. Milani complimented everything from the china to the view from the windows, her voice getting shriller with each forced compliment. Elliot ate in silence, occasionally sneaking glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking. After breakfast, I stood and addressed them like the CEO I'd become. "Tom, you'll meet Jose at the pool house at 9. He'll explain your daily responsibilities. Milani, Maria is waiting for you in the laundry room. She'll start with teaching you how to properly sort and wash clothes. Elliot, you'll help your father until lunch. Then we're going to have a conversation, just the 2 of us." Tom stood up quickly. "Mom, I really should spend today working on my resume, making some calls. You'll have plenty of time for job hunting. Right now, you need to earn your place in this house." "But I have interviews to prepare for, contacts to follow up with." I looked at him steadily until he stopped talking. "Tom, in the 7 years since you cut me out of your life, how many jobs have you had?" He flushed. That's not really relevant." "Answer the question." 3, he said quietly. "And how many of those ended well?" His shoulders slumped. "None of them. So perhaps it's time to try a different approach. Manual labor builds character. It teaches you the value of hard work and honest effort, things you apparently never learned." The words hit him like physical blows. I could see him remembering all the times I'd worked multiple jobs to support him, all the sacrifices I'd made that he'd taken for granted. Milani tried to intervene. "Velma, Surely there's a better way to— The way I see it, Milani, you have two choices. You can accept the conditions of staying in my home, or you can find somewhere else to go. But those are your only options. She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to remember their desperate circumstances. Her face went through several expressions before settling on resigned acceptance. Of course, she said through gritted teeth. I'm happy to help however I can. Excellent. Maria is waiting. I watched them file out of the dining room, Tom trudging toward his manual labor, Milani clutching her silk robe like armor as she headed toward actual work for probably the first time in years, Elliot trailing behind his father with teenage reluctance. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something that might have been guilt. Then I remembered 8-year-old Elliot pushing away my birthday gift and calling me a fake grandmother. I remembered 7 years of silence, 7 years of being treated like I didn't exist. The guilt disappeared. I spent the morning in my office, handling business calls and reviewing contracts. Through my window, I could see Tom struggling to maneuver the pool cleaning equipment under Jose's patient instruction. He'd been at it for 2 hours, and sweat stains were already showing through his shirt. His soft office worker's hands would be blistered by evening. Around noon, I heard raised voices from the kitchen area. I made my way downstairs to find Milani standing in the laundry room, her silk robe replaced by old jeans and a t-shirt, both now damp with water and spotted with bleach stains. Her perfectly styled hair was falling out of its ponytail, and there were tears of frustration in her eyes. Maria stood nearby, her expression diplomatically neutral. Is there a problem? I asked. She put the red towels in with the white linens, Maria explained quietly. Everything is pink now. I looked at the pile of ruined linens, expensive Egyptian cotton sheets and towels that would have to be replaced. In my old life, this would have been a financial disaster. Now it was just an expensive lesson. How did this happen, Milani? Her voice was shaking with frustration and humiliation. I don't know. Maria was explaining something about water temperature and sorting, but it was so confusing, and I thought, you thought you didn't need to pay attention because this was beneath you? She stared at me, tears spilling over. That's not. I didn't mean. Maria, please show Mrs. Milani how to properly sort laundry. Start from the very beginning, as if she's never done it before. But I have done laundry before, Milani protested. Clearly not well, I said. The ruined linens will be replaced, and the cost will be deducted from. Well, I suppose since you don't have any income, you'll work off the debt through extra household duties. The look of shock and humiliation on her face was almost satisfying. Almost. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a conversation scheduled with my grandson. I found Elliot sitting by the pool, his clothes dirty from whatever outdoor work Tom had assigned him. He was staring at the water with the kind of sullen expression that seemed permanently attached to teenagers' faces. Elliot, I said, settling into the chair next to him, we need to talk. He glanced at me warily. About what? Oh, about what happened when you were 8 years old. About what you were told, and what you believed, and how that affected both of us. His teenage composure cracked slightly. I was just a kid. I didn't understand what was happening. I know. That's why we're talking now when you're old enough to understand. For the first time since he'd arrived, Elliot looked directly at me, really looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I'd been hoping to find for 7 years. I saw my grandson, still there underneath all the confusion and hurt, waiting to be found again. But this was just the beginning of what I had planned for all of them. Do you remember anything about your father when he was your age? I asked Elliot, settling back in my chair beside the pool. The afternoon sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in 7 years, I was sitting next to my grandson having a real conversation. He shrugged, still not quite meeting my eyes. Not really. Mom doesn't talk about when Dad was young very much. That's because she doesn't know those stories. But I do. I paused, watching his profile. Would you like to hear some? Another shrug, but this one seemed more curious than dismissive. I guess. I smiled, remembering Tom at 15. So different from this sullen boy beside me, yet somehow exactly the same in the way he held his shoulders when he was trying not to show interest. Your father was terrible at baseball, I said. Absolutely awful. But he desperately wanted to make the high school team because this girl he liked always went to the games. Elliot's mouth twitched slightly. Dad played baseball? Tried to. He begged me to sign him up for Little League when he was 7, then spent every practice running around the outfield chasing butterflies instead of fly balls. I chuckled at the memory. But when he was 15, he decided he was going to be the next Babe Ruth. So I worked extra shifts for 3 months to pay for private coaching lessons. Did he make the team? He lasted exactly 1 week. Got hit in the face with a ground ball during his first practice because he was too busy looking at Sarah Mitchell in the stands to pay attention to the game. Elliot actually smiled at that. A small smile, but genuine. That sounds like Dad. He came home with a black eye and a bruised ego, convinced his life was over because Sarah would never notice him now. So you know what I did? He looked at me directly for the first time. What? I taught him how to cook. Figured if he couldn't impress her with athletics, maybe he could win her over with food. I paused. It worked. They dated for 2 years. Dad can cook? Elliot sounded genuinely surprised. He made the most incredible chocolate chip cookies, had his own secret ingredient and everything. I watched Elliot's face, saw the hunger there, not for food, but for these pieces of his father's history that no one had ever shared with him. He used to bake them whenever he was nervous about something. Big test, job interview, asking a girl to prom. The whole house would smell like vanilla and brown sugar. He never makes cookies anymore, Elliot said quietly. No, I don't suppose he does. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the pool maintenance crew Tom was supposedly helping. My son was sitting in the shade, looking exhausted after just half a day of physical work. Can I ask you something? Elliot said suddenly. Anything. That day when I was 8, at my birthday party. What really happened? I'd been dreading this question and hoping for it at the same time. What do you remember? He frowned, concentrating. I remember being confused. Mom said something about you not being my real grandmother, but I didn't understand what she meant. And then everyone was upset and you left and... He trailed off. And then I disappeared from your life. Yeah. He looked down at his hands. I asked about you sometimes, when I was younger. But Mom always said you were busy with your own life, that you didn't want to see us anymore. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. 7 years of lies, told so smoothly that a child accepted them as truth. Elliot, I said carefully, I want you to understand something. I never stopped wanting to see you, not for a single day. He looked up sharply. But you never called. You never came over. Because I wasn't allowed to. Your parents made it very clear that I wasn't welcome in your life. But me, he struggled with the concept, this fundamental shift in the story he'd been told. But you're my grandmother. Yes, I am. I'm your father's mother, which makes me your grandmother in every way that matters. I was there the day you were born. I held you when you were 20 minutes old and sang you the same lullabies I used to sing to your father. I changed your diapers, walked the floor with you when you had colic, taught you to tie your shoes. His eyes were wide now, searching my face. I don't remember that. You were very young, but I remember all of it. Every first word, every scraped knee, every bedtime story. I leaned forward slightly. Do you want to know what your first word was? He nodded. More. Not mama or dada, more. You said it every time I fed you, every time I read you a story, every time I sang to you, like you never wanted anything good to end. Tears were gathering in his eyes, though he was trying hard not to show it. Why did she say those things? About you not being my real grandmother? This was the hardest part. How do you explain adult cruelty to a 15-year-old? How do you tell a child that his mother was threatened by the love between him and his grandmother? I think your mother felt insecure, I said finally. She wanted to be the most important woman in your life, and she saw me as competition. Sometimes people do hurtful things when they're afraid, but that's not fair. No, it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to you, and it wasn't fair to me. But most of all, it wasn't fair to rob you of knowing your own family history. Elliot wiped his eyes quickly, embarrassed by his emotion. Tell me more about Dad, about when he was young. And so I did. I told him about Tom's first day of school, when he was so nervous he threw up on his new shoes. About the time he tried to give me a haircut while I was sleeping because he thought I looked tired. About his obsession with dinosaurs that lasted from age 6 to age 12, and how he used to lecture anyone who would listen about the difference between a brontosaurus and a brachiosaurus. He wanted to be a paleontologist, I said. Used to dig holes in our tiny backyard looking for fossils. Never found anything but earthworms and bottle caps. But that didn't stop him. What changed his mind? I hesitated. Life, I suppose. When you're poor, dreams become luxuries. Your father was practical. He chose a career path that seemed stable and safe. Is that why he's so... Elliot searched for the word. Scared all the time? The observation surprised me with its accuracy. What do you mean? He's always worried about money, about his job, about what people think. He never just relaxes, never has fun. Out of the mouths of babes. My 15-year-old grandson had identified something it had taken me years to understand about my own son. I think your father learned to be afraid when he was very young, I said. When his father died, everything became uncertain. We struggled financially for years. Tom learned to associate security with survival, but he had you. Yes, but I was struggling too. Working multiple jobs, always tired, always stressed about bills. Tom grew up thinking that's just how life was, one crisis after another. Elliot was quiet for a long time, processing this. Finally, he asked, "Is that why you got so successful? So you'd never have to struggle like that again?" The kid was perceptive. Partly, yes. But mostly I built my business because I needed to prove something. To myself, and to the people who discarded me. Like us. The simple honesty of it hit me like a physical blow. Yes, like you. Another long silence. Then Elliot said, "I'm sorry. Oh, sweetheart. You have nothing to apologize for. You were a child. You believed what the adults in your life told you to believe. But I should have questioned it. I should have wondered why you just disappeared. I should have tried to contact you. You were 8 years old, Elliot. 8. You can't hold yourself responsible for adult decisions." He looked at me with eyes that seemed much older than his 15 years. "Do you hate us? For what we did to you?" It was the question I'd been asking myself since they showed up on my doorstep. Did I hate them? There had been times, especially in those first dark months after the rejection, when hate seemed like the only emotion strong enough to match my pain. I was angry for a long time, I said honestly. Hurt, disappointed, but hate? No, I don't think I ever hated you. Even when I was furious, even when I wanted revenge, I never stopped loving you. Even though I said those awful things, you were repeating what you'd been taught. That wasn't really you talking. That was fear and confusion and adult manipulation. Tears were flowing freely now, and he didn't try to hide them. I missed you. I didn't even know I missed you because I didn't really remember you, but something always felt missing. My own eyes filled up. I missed you too, every day. Can we? He wiped his nose on his sleeve. Can we try to be a family again? Like, for real this time? Before I could answer, raised voices from the house interrupted our moment. Through the patio doors, I could see Tom and Milani in what appeared to be a heated argument in the kitchen. Elliot sighed. They've been fighting a lot lately. About money, about jobs, about everything. How long has this been going on? Months. Ever since Dad lost his job. Maybe longer. He looked at me sideways. Is that why you're making them do chores and stuff? To punish them? I considered the question carefully. I'm making them contribute because everyone in this house contributes. That's not punishment. That's accountability. Your parents have lived their entire adult lives without understanding the value of hard work or the consequences of their choices. But you could just help them without making them scrub floors and stuff, right? You have enough money. I do have enough money, but money without wisdom is worthless. Your parents need to learn some hard truths about themselves before they can move forward. The argument inside was getting louder. I could hear Tom's voice, strained with frustration, and Milani's sharp responses. Should we go inside? Elliot asked. In a moment. But first I want to answer your question. About being a family again. He looked at me hopefully. Yes, I said. I'd like that very much, but it has to be built on truth this time. No more lies, no more manipulation. Can you handle that? Yes, ma'am. And it means standing up for what's right. even when it's difficult, even when it means disagreeing with your parents. Are you ready for that? He nodded, more certain now. I think so. Good, because I have a feeling we're about to find out. The patio door slammed open, and Tom stormed out, his face red with anger and exertion. Behind him, Milani appeared in the doorway, her hair disheveled and her expression wild. "Mom," Tom said, breathing hard, "we need to talk. Right now." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised who'd disappointed me so deeply, who was now standing in my backyard demanding things from me like a petulant child. "Yes," I said calmly, "I think we do." But what I was about to tell them would change everything. Again. Tom stood in front of me, sweat staining his shirt, his hands blistered from unfamiliar manual labor, and something in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a child. Desperation mixed with a dawning understanding of his own helplessness. "This is insane, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Making us do servant work like we're prisoners or something. We came here for help, not to be humiliated." Milani appeared beside him, her designer clothes replaced with cleaning supplies-stained work clothes, her perfect hair hanging limp around her shoulders. "Velma, I think we need to establish some boundaries here. I'm willing to help around the house, but having Maria treat me like an incompetent child is degrading." I remained seated, Elliot beside me, and looked at these two adults who had crashed into my peaceful life demanding shelter, while simultaneously resenting the terms of that shelter. "Sit down," I said quietly. "Mom, I think you need to understand." "Sit down." Something in my tone made them both comply, though Tom's jaw was tight with resentment. "Elliot," I said to my grandson, "what your parents and I are about to discuss might be difficult to hear. If you'd prefer to go inside." "No," he said firmly, "I want to stay. I'm tired of being protected from the truth." I smiled at him, proud of his strength. "All right then." I turned back to Tom and Milani. "You want to establish boundaries. Let's talk about boundaries." Tom leaned forward. "Mom, I know we haven't been in touch, but that doesn't mean you can treat us like..." "Like what, Tom? Like people who have to work for what they get? Like adults who are responsible for their own choices?" I kept my voice level, but steel ran underneath it. "Tell me, in the past 7 years, how many times did you call me?" His face flushed. "That's not. The situation was complicated." "0, I continued. 0 phone calls, 0 birthday cards, 0 invitations to holidays or family gatherings. 0 acknowledgement that I existed at all until you needed something from me." Milani shifted uncomfortably. "Velma, family relationships are complex. Don't." I held up a hand. "Don't you dare talk to me about family relationships. You systematically poisoned my relationship with my grandson. You convinced an 8-year-old child that I wasn't really his grandmother. You turned my own son against me and then convinced him it was for the best." "I never turned Tom against you," she protested. "Didn't you?" I looked directly at my son. "Tom, the day of Elliot's 8th birthday, when your wife humiliated me in front of your child, what did you do?" Tom's mouth opened and closed without sound. "You told me to leave," I said. "Your wife attacked me, hurt your son, and destroyed our family, and you told me to leave and give you space to handle it. So I did. For 7 years. I was trying to keep the peace. You were taking the easy way out. You were choosing the path that required the least courage, the least confrontation, the least personal responsibility, just like you've done your entire adult life." The words hit him like physical blows. I could see him remembering all the times I'd bailed him out of problems, all the times I'd made his life easier while he made no effort to make mine easier in return. "That's not fair," he said weakly. "Fair?" I stood up, my composure finally cracking. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you defending your mother when your wife attacked her. Fair would have been you maintaining a relationship with the woman who sacrificed everything to raise you. Fair would have been you teaching your son to respect his grandmother instead of allowing her to be erased from his life." Tom's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the little boy who used to run to me when he was hurt or scared. Milani tried a different approach. "Look, Velma, I admit I made mistakes. I was young and insecure and probably handled things badly, but that was 7 years ago. Can't we move past it?" "Move past it," I repeated. "The way you moved past me? What do you want from us?" she demanded, her fake sweetness finally dropping away. "You want us to grovel? You want us to admit you were right and we were terrible? Fine. We're sorry. We screwed up. We need your help. Are you happy now? I studied her face. The sharp cheekbones, the calculating eyes, the mouth that had spoken so many cruel words. Even now, even desperate and dependent, she couldn't manage genuine remorse. Only strategic apology designed to get what she wanted. No, Milani, I'm not happy, but I am done. Done with what? Tom asked. Done pretending that biology makes us family. Done accepting scraps of affection when it's convenient for you. Done being the woman you call when you need something and ignore when you don't. I walked to the patio table where I'd left a manila folder earlier. Inside were documents I'd had my lawyer prepare weeks ago when I first heard through the grapevine that Tom was having financial troubles. I have a proposition for you, I said, opening the folder. Tom, I'm prepared to offer you a position with Patterson Services. Starting salary of $60,000 a year, with performance bonuses and full benefits. It's honest work. You'd be managing one of our maintenance divisions, learning the business from the ground up. Tom's eyes widened. 60,000? That's more than I was making at my last job. But there are conditions. I pulled out a contract. First, you start at entry level. No special treatment because you're my son. You work your way up based on merit, not family connections. Second, you undergo counseling, individual and marriage counseling. You need to understand why you've made the choices you've made and how to make better ones. His face went through several emotions. Hope, pride, calculation. What about me? Milani asked. Do I get a job too? You get a choice, I said, pulling out a second document. You can accept a position as well, also starting at entry level. Or, I paused, watching her face. You can sign this. I handed her a different set of papers. Her eyes scanned the page, growing wider with each line. This is a non-disclosure agreement, she said slowly. Among other things, in exchange for a lump sum payment of $50,000, you agree to certain terms. You will not interfere with my relationship with Elliot. You will not speak negatively about me to him or to other family members. And you will publicly acknowledge, to our extended family, that you lied about me 7 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. You want me to humiliate myself, she whispered. I want you to tell the truth. For once. Tom was staring at the documents as if they were written in a foreign language. Mom, what are you saying exactly? I'm saying that I'm willing to help this family rebuild, but only if we're building something real this time. Something based on honesty and mutual respect. And if we don't accept these terms? Milani asked, her voice shaking. Then you're welcome to stay here for 2 more weeks while you find alternative arrangements. But after that, you'll need to leave. The power dynamic in the conversation had shifted so completely that all 3 of them seemed to be having trouble processing it. For 7 years, they had held all the cards. They had been the ones who could offer or withhold access to family, to Elliot, to belonging. Now, suddenly, I was the one with the power to grant or deny everything they needed. Elliot, who had been quiet through this entire exchange, finally spoke up. What about me? Do I get a choice? I looked at my grandson, this young man who had been caught in the middle of adult games and adult cruelty, who was just now beginning to understand the true shape of his family's dysfunction. You always have a choice, Elliot, about where you want to live, who you want to spend time with, what kind of person you want to become. Can I think about it? All of this? Of course. Take all the time you need. Tom was still staring at his contract. If I take this job, I'd be working for you. You'd be my boss. Yes. That might be complicated. It might be, or it might be the best thing that ever happened to both of us. But Tom, understand this. I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you an opportunity to prove that you can be the man I raised you to be, the man I always believed you could be. Something broke in his face then. The defensive anger, the resentment, the stubborn pride. It all cracked open, and underneath was the scared little boy who had lost his father too young and spent his whole life trying to find solid ground. I don't know if I can do this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You are, I said firmly. You're my son. Strength is in your DNA. You just forgot how to access it. Milani was still holding her papers, her hands shaking slightly. If I sign this, if I take the money and agree to these terms, what happens to us? To our marriage? That's between you and Tom, I said. But I will say this. A marriage built on lies and manipulation was never going to last anyway. At least this way, you'll both have a chance to build something real, whether that's together or apart. She looked at Tom, searching his face for some sign of what he wanted her to do. But for the first time in their relationship, Tom wasn't looking to her for direction. He was looking at me. I want to try, he said suddenly. I want to take the job. I want to do the counseling. I want to, he swallowed hard. I want to be the son you deserved to have. The words hit me like a physical force. After 7 years of silence, 7 years of rejection, 7 years of believing I had lost my son forever, he was choosing me, choosing us, choosing to be better. And I want to be your grandmother again, I said to Elliot. Your real grandmother, not the fake one you were told to reject. I want to know who you are now, what you love, what scares you, what makes you laugh. I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. Elliot didn't answer with words. Instead, he got up from his chair and hugged me. The first real hug we'd shared since he was 8 years old. He was taller than me now, broader. But in that moment, he felt like the little boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and hurt feelings. All eyes turned to Milani. She sat there for a long moment, staring at the contract in her hands, understanding that her answer would determine not just her immediate future, but the entire trajectory of this fractured family. Finally, she looked up at me. Her face had changed. The calculating hardness was gone, replaced by something that might have been genuine remorse. I hurt you, she said quietly. I hurt all of us. I was so scared of losing control, of not being the most important person in Tom's life, that I destroyed something beautiful. I took away Elliot's grandmother and Tom's mother because I was selfish and insecure. She paused, tears gathering in her eyes. I can't undo what I did, but I can stop making it worse. She picked up a pen from the table and signed the contract. 3 months later, I stood in my kitchen making chocolate chip cookies. Tom's recipe, the one I'd taught him when he was 15 and heartbroken over Sarah Mitchell. The house smelled like vanilla and brown sugar, and for the first time in 7 years, it felt like home. Tom was doing well at the company, better than I'd expected. The physical work had been good for him, building not just muscle, but confidence. The counseling was helping too. Both individual and couples therapy were slowly unraveling years of dysfunction and fear. Milani had kept her word. She'd publicly apologized to our extended family for the lies she'd told about me. It had been painful for her, humiliating in the way that real accountability always is, but it had also been freeing. Without the weight of maintaining false narratives, she seemed lighter somehow, more genuine. The marriage was still fragile, still rebuilding, but it was based on honesty now, instead of manipulation and avoidance. And Elliot, my grandson, had moved into the bedroom next to mine. He was thriving in ways I'd never expected. His grades had improved, he'd joined the school's debate team, and he spent hours in the evenings listening to stories about his father's childhood and his grandfather he'd never met. The doorbell rang, and I wiped my hands on my apron before answering. It was Maria, arriving for her Thursday cleaning session, but she stopped short when she saw me. Mrs. Patterson, you're cooking? I laughed. Making cookies for my grandson. He has friends coming over after school today. She smiled. The first time in 3 years I'd seen her genuinely happy expression instead of her professional politeness. That's wonderful, she said. The house feels different now. Full. Yes, I thought as I returned to the kitchen. Full. Not of the silence and emptiness that had defined my success for so many years, but of the messy, complicated, beautiful reality of family. Real family, built not on obligation or biology, but on choice and forgiveness, and the courage to tell the truth. I'd spent 7 years building an empire to prove my worth, but in the end, the only proof that mattered was this: the laughter echoing through my house, the smell of cookies baking, the knowledge that I was no longer alone. I had my family back, Not the family that had discarded me, but a new family built on the